let's pick up where I left off. So I'm standing in the corner of our kitchen in our home that is out in the middle of nowhere. I was text messaging someone. I'm not sure who I was messaging, but I was standing in the middle of the kitchen because that's the only place we got service. As I'm standing there, I hear the click of a gun. My body went numb. There was nowhere I could go because where I was standing was just windows. And I froze. And I'm not sure what happened from that point. He did not put a gun to my head. He had gone downstairs. We were 30 feet in the air. He had gone downstairs and he was just going to flatten my tires so I could not leave. Since I would not tell him where I was going, he was going to stop that. But he did not do anything. I know you're thinking, you're absolutely crazy. Why didn't you leave over a year ago? I don't know. But he ended up blocking me in with another vehicle and I could not leave. I called one of my friends that lived way down the road. Like I said, we were out in the middle of nowhere. We were on the river, 25 minutes from town. But I did have a friend that lived nearby. I called him, he called my brother, and my brother came to get me. And at that point, I filed a protective order on the father of my son. He has never physically hurt me. I know you're thinking, you heard the click of a gun. I did. And at that point, I did decide, this could go south really quick. So I put a protective order on the father of my son, and I stayed. So he was arrested. At this time, he'd been arrested, and this time it was because of me. And I had to do what I had to do to protect myself and my son. It was no longer about trying to save him or protect him. At this point, it's about me, and it's about my little boy. So note that a piece of paper does not keep anybody from your house. When you live out in the middle of nowhere, it really doesn't keep anyone from your house. So I would see evidence that he had been there. I had called the cops back, and they really didn't do anything. So there was no contact between him. There was none. So I have my little boy's first birthday, and he wasn't allowed to come. And that was very difficult. Not because necessarily he wasn't there, but why he couldn't be there. And that was a hard pill to swallow. How in the world did I get here? And you're thinking, well, you didn't leave. Well, you're right, I didn't. But 2 years ago, I was on top of the world. I was living my dream, and then here I am. So we have our son's first birthday, and I celebrated it without his father. During that time, our house, the property around it had flooded. Our house didn't flood, but the property around it flooded. I was staying with a friend, and my world was it was a mess, a complete mess. I got back to our house, and then I started working, and some friends that lived way out there near us were keeping our son. And I was in town, and I get a phone call that my little boy had fallen and he wasn't waking up. I don't even remember putting the phone down. I'm sure I threw it. I left and 90 miles per hour out to pick up my little boy. Actually, I went to get my dad first so he could hold my son on the way. I figured I could get there quicker than an ambulance could get there. So I go and get our son. Remember, there's a protective order on his father. Now I'm headed out 25 minutes away to get my little boy. He was 18 months old. And brought him to the hospital. He was throwing up. He was just out of it. He was really tired. My dad was trying to keep him up on the way to the hospital. And we get to the hospital, and one of the doctors you do not want to see was there. It was a neurosurgeon. And he mentioned the word Shreveport, which meant that he would have to be taken somewhere else. And I was a complete mess. Whew. I was a mess. I had already grieved the loss, even though I didn't physically lose the father of my son, I grieved like I had lost him. I felt like I had been to a funeral and I had buried him. The man that I fell in love with, he was no more. And I grieved more than I have ever grieved anyone. To this day, I've buried my father. I have buried his parents. I have buried cousins, and I grieved like, I don't have words for it. So this time, I don't know if I'm ever gonna see my son again. 18 months old, can't talk. And I don't know what in the world happened to him. So we were transported to another hospital via ambulance, where he stayed in the PICU for 7 days. My son's father came to the hospital. I texted him, I don't care if he had a protective order or not, it's his little boy. And he said, I'm coming to see him. And I said, you can't. And he's like, that's my little boy. So we go to another hospital, and for 7 days. So during that time, I allowed my son's father to come up there. And my family tried to prevent it. So here I was, watching my little boy. You know, he was in a medically induced coma. And I was watching him by myself. At this time, you know, nobody wanted the father of my son up there. And at this point, I didn't care what anybody thought, what their opinions were. This was about my little boy. And now you think his father didn't deserve to be there. Maybe that's what you think. But I needed him there. I needed him to tell me that our little boy's gonna be okay. So finally I said, nobody can come up here. If he can come up here, nobody's gonna come up here. So for 7 days, I stayed in a room. You know, my family had come. They had come to check on my little boy, and they still checked on him, text message. But I was tired of it. I was tired of fighting people. I was tired of hurting. And I just needed to know my little boy was gonna be okay. So he ended up having a skull fracture, a concussion, a brain hemorrhage. CPS was called. He wasn't with me when any of this happened. To this day, I don't know what happened. And I think God protected me during that time, because my little boy needed his mom. So here we are, 18 months old. I'm bringing my little boy home, alone. I still have a protective order on his father. Protective order. My little boy in the PICU not knowing if he'll ever come out, if he'll ever speak, if he'll ever walk, if he'll be the same little boy that I had 7 days prior. And when I tell you I was living in hell, I was living in complete